America's role in coups, government overthrows, and dictatorships. The United States, regarded as a beacon of democracy and freedom, has paradoxically been involved in various coups, government overthrows, and support for dictatorships throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. This essay delves into the motivations, methods, and impacts of U.S. interventions in foreign nations, examining case studies that illuminate the American government's complex relationship with global governance and sovereignty. The roots of U.S. involvement in foreign regime changes can be traced back to the Cold War era, where the primary motivation was the containment of communism. The domino theory, which suggested that the fall of one country to communism would lead to the fall of its neighbors, prompted the U.S. to support anti-communist regimes and movements, often at the expense of democratic principles. Economic interests, such as access to natural resources and strategic military interests, also played significant roles in these interventions. Key interventions include Iran in 1953, where the CIA orchestrated a coup to overthrow Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh after his nationalization of the Iranian oil industry threatened U.S. and British oil interests. The operation reinstated Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who ruled as an autocrat until the Iranian Revolution in 1979. In Guatemala, in 1954, the U.S. backed a coup to depose President Jacobo Arbenz, whose agrarian reforms endangered American business interests, particularly those of the United Fruit Company. The resultant military dictatorship plunged Guatemala into decades of violence and civil war. Chile, in 1973, saw U.S. support for the military coup, led by General Augusto Pinochet, against the democratically elected socialist president Salvador Allende. Allende's nationalization of industries had alarmed U.S.-based multinational corporations. Pinochet's brutal regime lasted until 1990, marked by severe human rights abuses. In Vietnam in 1963, amidst the Vietnam War, the U.S. facilitated the overthrow of President Ngo Dinh Diem, whose repressive policies against Buddhists and strategic failures were seen as obstacles in the fight against the Communist North. This intervention led to increased U.S. military involvement in Vietnam. The U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, although not a traditional coup, overthrew Saddam Hussein under the pretext of eliminating weapons of mass destruction. The long-term chaos and conflict that ensued have led to questions about the legitimacy and consequences of the intervention. The aftermath of U.S. interventions has often been less than favorable, with many countries falling into cycles of violence, instability, and authoritarianism. While the intended goal might have been to curb undesirable ideologies or regimes, the long-term consequences have frequently contradicted the fundamental American values of democracy and human rights. These actions have sparked significant international and domestic debate over their ethical justification. Critics argue that such interventions are primarily driven by imperialistic and neo-colonial ambitions, undermining the self-determination and sovereignty of nations. Proponents often justify these actions under the guise of national security or the promotion of democracy, although the outcomes sometimes belie these intentions. The involvement of the United States in foreign coups and the support of dictatorships is a complex and controversial chapter in its history. While driven by varied motivations, the outcomes have often been fraught with negative consequences for the targeted regions. Understanding these interventions is crucial in evaluating America's foreign policy and commitment to global democracy and human rights.